It feels like without us even ever really realizing it, Nintendo is growing their portfolio and gathering more and more partners to help aid developments of their titles moving forward. Before, during the 3DS and Wii U era, it was pretty clear cut who was working with Nintendo. During that period, there were a couple of new teams brought on board, like Grezzo, who did the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remakes on 3DS, and now, of course, they are doing, new 2D Zelda games like Echoes of Wisdom. But in the past 2 years especially, we have seen a lot of new moves by Nintendo when it comes to having new development teams that they haven't really had a history of working with in the past, having them take on the legacy of a lot of their older franchises, which could very well be a great sign for the Switch 2 in terms of never having a software drought. You look back to the Wii U, even some years of the Switch in those early years like 2018 and 2020, and there were months without new releases. But now, with Nintendo seemingly collecting all of the Infinity Stones of developers, that should never happen again. Even with game development taking longer and longer, if they keep making these new partnerships and getting these new developers to carry on their legacy IP, we should never see a drought like that again. Let's talk about it. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to talk about how many new developers that Nintendo has been working with in the past couple of years, as well as their plans to expand their own headquarters, their recent acquisition of Shiver Entertainment, and what it all really means for Nintendo moving forward with the Switch 2, but also in the immediate future with the current Nintendo Switch. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we have seen a lot of releases from Nintendo recently that are not from their core development teams, be that at Nintendo EPD or be that by studios they own or worked very closely with in the past. This year especially, we've seen basically no new releases from any of their major teams. I guess the closest thing would be Aonuma and EPD3's involvement with Echoes of Wisdom, right? But for the most part, all of their major first-party teams and closest partners have already shifted to Switch 2 development, which meant in the meantime, they had to have new partners making Switch 1 software while they get all of that Switch 2 software ready. And even if it is just them, biding their time, right? Maybe they don't end up working with all of these developers again. We have seen a staggering amount of new partnerships made by Nintendo to kind of keep the Switch 1 software flowing. And I wanted to talk about that today because I think it's so interesting. And when you look at the development landscape for Nintendo first-party releases, or Nintendo published releases, I should say, this might change everything. We might see a new Mario and Luigi game made by Acquire. We might see another new Famicom Detective Club game by Mages. We might see a new Super Mario RPG game developed by Art Piazza. There's plenty of new avenues they can go to keep these legacy franchises on, getting support, while their main teams still work on the main franchises, like your, platforming Mario games, like your Mario Kart, your Smash Bros. Even that, then again, we had Bandai Namco make that new Studio 2 or Studio S kind of development team there, so they're likely working on Smash Bros. So that is kind of a new thing for future-proofing for Switch 2. But we're seeing all of these new partnerships being made, and it's just so exciting because it means that the legacy IP that we love, or maybe even IP that are extremely niche, like Endless Ocean, these things can continue to exist while the core of Nintendo, the teams that make your Animal Crossing, your Splatoon, your Donkey Kong, hopefully, fingers crossed we get a new Donkey Kong game soon, they can keep making those things and maybe even expand into making some new IP. The Switch 2, if it is successful, will likely live as long as the current Nintendo Switch, which means we should be seeing a scenario here where we get a Mario Kart game from the Mario Kart team, but then we also get something else entirely. Now, you could argue that should have happened. This generation, we had ARMS in 2017 alongside 8 Deluxe, and then all we got was a Mario Kart 8, DLC expansion pack. But the point is, simply having all of these developers potentially, locked in on a Nintendo IP is just a great thing for Nintendo fans. It's a great thing for Nintendo. It allows them to be a little bit more flexible with their release schedule. Nintendo is so good about finishing games and not even announcing them, right? Like, they're so good about finishing games, not rushing them out. There are a couple cases, but, like, for the most part, when a game is announced by Nintendo, it's already done and ready to go. So if they have even more developers working with them, that becomes even more possible as time goes on. Now, there's a couple specific things I want to look at here, starting off with a quote from Furukawa at the investor meeting back in May. And what he said kind of just reaffirms what I'm talking about. Someone asked or said something along the lines of like, hey, Mario Wonder released last year. That was the first new 2D Mario game in 11 years. It seems that software development for Nintendo Switch is taking longer than it did in the past. And Furukawa responded by saying, game development today is more prolonged, more complex, and more advanced. That is unavoidable. To deal with this, we are continually expanding our development resources and making the necessary investments. So while it's possible there's even more to come when they announce the Switch 2, maybe there's even more partners that they've been working with behind the scenes, we're already seeing the fruits of that effort. We are seeing so many new teams that we hadn't really seen from Nintendo before, and I kind of want to just go through these one by one and talk about whether or not we will probably see more from them in the future. Nintendo is funny because usually when a team makes a game, they almost always, at least in some capacity, kind of get locked to that thing for a while. You know, during the DS and 3DS era, Alpha Dream, that was the Mario and Luigi team. HAL Laboratory is the Kirby team, you know, so on and so forth. So I don't know if that same thing will necessarily happen here, but just going through a couple of the recent releases over the past couple of years and the new partners that they're working with, of course we had Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp from WayForward. WayForward does a lot. I'm not sure if necessarily we would see something else from them, but maybe that is the pipeline to getting a new Advance Wars game, or even a remake of some of the DS games there. I know that didn't do very well, but the way Nintendo seems to release software, they obviously care about sales, right? You know, they want to make the most money they possibly can, but they also very much care about a diverse lineup of software. And if they see a spot in their lineup for a new Advance Wars game or another remake, even though 1+2 Reboot Camp didn't do that well seemingly, I think there's totally room for WayForward to be making a new Advance Wars, or like I said, another remaster. One of the biggest new partners that Nintendo has that I think is possibly the most interesting, actually, is Aiding. So Aiding is a team that they've worked with in the past. They made the Kururin game on GBA, as well as Kururin Squash on GameCube. They assisted the developments of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Pikmin 4, and I find this to be the most interesting: Switch Sports Basketball. So they worked with Nintendo very closely on Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and then especially Pikmin 4, and then from there, they bounced over to making a Switch Sports Basketball mode. That's crazy. Aiding seems to be a developer that, you know, they're still doing other things. They're making that new Hunter x Hunter game that releases next year. I'm excited to play that. Of course, they did the Naruto Clash of Ninja games back in the day, so they definitely have a fighting game lineage. They seem to be a major developer that Nintendo is seemingly kind of bringing on board. To do Pikmin is one thing, you know, and maybe they're going to be the new Pikmin studio. Maybe Pikmin 5 will be, you know, maybe Aiding will be the lead developer for that game. I think that's very likely given their history of supporting Pikmin on the Switch. But it's the fact that they helped with a Switch Sports Basketball that I find so interesting, because that is an entirely different EPD team that makes Switch Sports. So that means Aiding is working just so closely, and they're almost kind of, in a way, they could almost be infused with EPD and how they're helping them support the development of their titles to then eventually make, like I said, a new Pikmin game, or maybe they'll be the lead developer of Switch Sports Resort or something, which are, I mean, that's a major game for Nintendo. So to have that outside support from Aiding for Pikmin, for Switch Sports, is huge. Maybe we see them make a new IP with Nintendo. Maybe we see them make Pikmin 5. Maybe that kind of frees up EPD 10 to focus even more on Mario Wonder 2 or another new IP or another Mario thing, right? Maybe a Donkey Kong game could be done by Tezuka. Instead of focusing on Pikmin, Aiding can just kind of take over that franchise for Nintendo and be the lead developer of Pikmin, which I'm going to do a separate video on this. Nintendo seems to be really pushing Pikmin recently, and actually we had that graph from their investor meeting showing all of their, or some of their recent kind of smaller franchises and how they've really grown on the Switch, including Xenoblade Chronicles, my beloved, but also Kirby, Metroid, and then Pikmin was on there as well. Pikmin is something that I really think that Nintendo is going to be pushing hard in the next generation to make it another one of their like major, hopefully 10 million plus selling IP if they can make it and elevate it to that level. So Pikmin being, you know, associated with Aiding now is absolutely crazy. We had Art Piazza do the remake of Super Mario RPG. Now, this is one that, once again, I could maybe see this being a one-off, but considering how well Super Mario RPG Remake did, I talked about this back in August. I think we could see them do a sequel. I know it's been a long time. I know it's a very different type of project. You know, it's not a remake, but take what they learned from that remake, take the engine, take the assets, and make a sequel to Super Mario RPG. One of the best-selling Mario RPGs on Switch. I think that is totally reasonable. Maybe they use Art Piazza as something more of just a remake studio moving forward. I know I've heard some people throw around the idea of Art Piazza doing an Earthbound remake. That'd be cool as well. Once again, just having a little bit more diversity in their lineup. Earthbound is a very long dead IP for Nintendo in terms of new releases, even though we always see like all the new merchandise coming out from Mother in Japan. Maybe we see them do Earthbound or just more remakes in general. Maybe Art Piazza does Golden Sun. That'd be really cool. Or, like I said, I think the most likely scenario, honestly, would probably be that they make Mario RPG 2, which is so exciting, and I really hope that ends up happening. It is also possible that Art Piazza never works with Nintendo again, but considering how well that remake did, I just would be surprised. In the past, they did Dragon Quest 7, I want to say, on 3DS, or maybe it was 8, it was one of those two. They helped with Dragon Quest 11, I believe they also did the iOS ports of Romancing Saga 3, so they, in the past, frankly, they haven't done like that much in the past. They did a lot of Dragon Quest remakes. Looking at their Wikipedia, they also did the 4, 5, and 6 remake on DS in collaboration with Square Enix. But Super Mario RPG, that is almost certainly their best-selling game they've ever developed. So, I mean, it's not like Square Enix owns Art Piazza. It'd be surprising if Nintendo doesn't want to continue that relationship, and same thing on the other side. I'd be surprised if Art Piazza doesn't also want to continue working with Nintendo on another Nintendo IP. Another one that we saw this year, pun intended, is another Code of Recollection from Arc System Works. I don't think anybody expected Arc System Works to be making that game when they announced it. When they announced it, I honestly thought maybe it was going to be Mages, which we'll talk about in just a second, the Famicom Detective Club remake developers. Arc System Works, they make fighting games. Like Aiding, Arc System Works exclusively almost makes fighting games, but they also do have just a long history. And it is weird to see them come out of nowhere and do another Code of Recollection. So while they have such a focus on fighting games, maybe this is another one where we see them kind of just fade into the background and not do another Nintendo thing. But the fact that they did another Code at all to begin with tells me that they have an interest in doing more than just the fighting games that they're kind of known for. So maybe we see them do remakes of the other Sing games from the DS. Maybe we see Hotel Dusk get a remake, The Last Window, which was never localized. Those are other games from the original Trace Memory or another Code developer. Maybe we see those get remade on the Switch or Switch 2. Or maybe they make a sequel to another Code. That's what we saw happen with Famicom Detective Club, which we can talk about next. We saw Mages do 2 remakes of the original 2 Famicom Detective Club games, and that was a direct pipeline and a pathway for them to make a new game with Sakamoto being Emio the Smiling Man. Nintendo seems very, into letting their older directors kind of pursue their passion projects. And while I would love Sakamoto to do something with Tomodachi Life or, keep working on Metroid, obviously, if this man just wants to make Famicom Detective Club games, and if they are as high quality as Emio was, and if Mages wants to continue that partnership as well, I don't see a reason to think that we don't get another Famicom Detective Club game on the Switch 2. Emio, we don't know the exact sales numbers. It sold under 1 million, but also that's only with, a month worth of data. I think it's possible that Emio maybe sold 500,000 to 700,000 copies, which for a visual novel like that is not bad at all. And it would probably fall right around what they expected to happen with that game. It's something that really helps diversify their lineup. It's an interesting game to talk about. It's a game that's, in the case of Emio, it didn't review the best, but a lot of fans were really into it, myself included. I love that game. So if we could expect a new Famicom Detective Club game from Mages every, say, 3 or 4 years, that'd be really cool. And just once again, like I said, add another little thing in the lineup that just helps differentiate Nintendo from everybody else. And yeah, of course, most recently, just last week or a couple weeks ago, we had the release of Mario and Luigi Brothership, which was done by Acquire, who helped co-develop the Octopath games. People are saying like Acquire developed Octopath. That's not entirely true. They helped with developments of Octopath, but we have Acquire now. And while it looks like Mario and Luigi Brothership is not doing very well at all in terms of sales, we'll have to see what that number ends up at after the holidays. I don't think Nintendo's going to look at the sales of that game and really say, okay, we don't want to work with you ever again. Mario and Luigi Brothership, I think, is one of the best games Nintendo released this year. It's right up there with Emio for me. I think it's a fantastic game, and I think it's very likely that we see Acquire continue that partnership with Nintendo and probably make another Mario and Luigi game with that same engine, with that same art style on the Switch 2. Why not take what they learned, kind of making this game from the ground up? I believe there's some former Alpha Dream staff involved there, but take what they learned making this new Brothership game for the Switch and make another one on the Switch 2, taking the feedback to heart. I know a lot of people are mixed on Brothership. They can hit it out of the park next time, I think, if they listen to that feedback and give fans what they want, especially after, like I said, I already think Brothership's a really great game. I know some people have issues with how you control Luigi and that kind of thing and the pacing. So if they can address those issues with another entry and it releases relatively early in the Switch lifecycle, first half of the Switch's lifecycle, maybe even before the next Paper Mario game, that could be huge. We also know that Forever Entertainment is doing Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is not something I really expected. I feel like this news really went under the radar, but back in 2021, we actually heard that Nintendo was giving financial support to Forever for a new publishing deal to kind of bring several games over to the Switch. And I feel like no one really talked about this back in 2021. I didn't see like anybody talking about it. Of course, Forever, they did the remake of Panzer Dragoon. I believe they also did some stuff for Square Enix. But yes, we now know they're doing Donkey Kong Country Returns, and this is one that maybe this was just padding, right? Maybe they're working with Forever Entertainment just so they have some Switch 1 software. Maybe we see more from them even next year. As soon as next year, we could see more ports and remasters from them just to kind of fill out that lineup. But if these remasters are high quality, I know people have some issues with how Donkey Kong Country Returns looks, but if the game comes out, it reviews well, if it's high quality, if it sells well enough, why not keep that deal going with the Switch 2? I mean, Nintendo, it seems like this generation, Nintendo really learned the art of the remake and the remaster. You know, we saw Zelda games get remastered in the past, but for the most part, it wasn't really until the Switch that they went all in on using remasters and remakes to kind of leverage and, you know, fill out the gaps in the release lineup. Why not keep that going on the Switch 2 with Forever? Maybe Forever can keep doing more DS and 3DS games, you know, that kind of thing. Or even more Wii games like Sin and Punishment. They did Panzer Dragoon, which is an on-rail shooter. Why not do Sin and Punishment Star Successor? That'd be really cool. So those are all of like the major new teams they're working with this generation, but they also acquired Shiver Entertainment back in May. Of course, that is the team located in Miami. They are responsible for the Switch ports of Mortal Kombat 1 as well as Hogwarts Legacy. We don't quite know what their plans are yet for that team, but I'd imagine either they're going to be a remake studio or they will continue supporting third party and kind of be Nintendo's eyes and ears on the third party front for the Switch 2. Maybe they'll help bring Call of Duty to Switch 2 and kind of be a support studio that way. Maybe they'll help Rockstar bring something over, you know, that kind of thing. Or just, you know, keep working with WB. I mean, they have a history with Mortal Kombat and Hogwarts Legacy, which are both Warner Bros. So maybe we just see them continue helping them and that kind of thing. But I imagine they'll have something interesting to say about Shiver in the first couple of years of Switch 2, be it from a third party perspective or a first party. And then finally, beyond all of that, beyond all of these new teams, Nintendo is expanding. Nintendo doesn't acquire studios very often. Like I said, Shiver, I think, is the first team they've acquired since Next Level Games, but before that, it was Monolith Soft in like 2010 or something along those lines. So it was a long time. They don't acquire studios on the same pacing that Sony and Microsoft do. So to see them acquire Shiver was a big deal. But also for the past couple of years, Nintendo has been working on developing a new development building for their internal teams. So I believe this was announced back in 2021, but looking at this Nintendo Life article from August of 2023, they actually delayed this building because they want to expand it even more. They acquired this new plot of land and they're building this new office building to kind of support and upgrade their development resources in-house for, you know, hardware planning, but also software. And they say this is planned to be completed in 2028 or later. We saw this back in, I think, 2015, 2016, where they actually kind of restructured their entire development pipeline, where they had all these EAD divisions. Then they restructured it to EPD, kind of combining the powers of the home console development teams as well as the handheld teams. Maybe this could be a similar thing for the Switch 2 here, where you know we see the Animal Crossing team and the Splatoon team, which are, you know, EPD5, maybe they split off. Even though there's not that much development overlap there in terms of like the credits, maybe we have a dedicated Splatoon team moving forward and a dedicated Animal Crossing team moving forward, a dedicated Metroid, a dedicated, you know, Pikmin, that kind of thing. This could be huge in terms of having just even more developers working on games nonstop. And it's just so exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Nintendo fan because while this year, and I'm going to talk about this in a video in the coming weeks here, I think this year was kind of rough in terms of, you know, the games they released and the overall quality of them. I think a lot of what they put out this year was kind of middling for a lot of people. Maybe not necessarily bad, but just kind of forgettable. That's because they're gearing up, right? They're getting ready to, you know, go crazy on the Switch 2 with an incredible software lineup, and I just can't wait to see it. So let me know what you think of all this down in the comments below. How you feel about Nintendo expanding their development partners and the teams they are working with. I would love to hear what you think. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo topics, discussions, theory, speculation, all that kind of stuff pretty much each and every day. I've been a little bit inactive recently. I apologize for that. Some stuff going on in my life, but we will be back to the regular upload schedule here soon. I think tomorrow is the Game Awards nominees. I'll probably do a video on that because I'm not really expecting Nintendo to get many nominations, but it'll be fun to talk about either way. And until next time, folks, of course, peace.